With AI nowadays, you cannot be a master of one. If you're a master of one, you are exposed to the elements and you are going to get your butt rocked. Your business is going to get rocked. It's transitioning back to being a jack of all trades, not a master of one, because the rest of the quote says, but oftentimes a better than a master of one. This is the hardest part of the entire private equity world. The little guys like Mikey Lucas and American Energy Fund are the hardest part, is putting together the deals and actually making sure that those deals are successful. I always tell people that if you don't assign every dollar before it hits your bank account, it will assign itself for you.
Welcome everybody back to the show. My name is Vince Perri. This is Beyond the Claim. I am your entrepreneur, business broker, public adjuster as well. And we're taking our show a little bit different, Mikey. What we're doing now is we're really just going, I've been a public adjuster for 16 years, and I am now just all in on entrepreneurs, business brokering, mergers and acquisitions, private equity firms, and all things alike. And you are like the perfect guest to have on here. Mikey, I want to welcome you. You are the CEO and founder of American Energy Fund. But before I get into your profile, I'd prefer for you, Mikey, to tell us a little bit about yourself.
No, I appreciate you, Vince. Thanks for having me on, and love your show, and been following you now for last at least 6-7 months now, and just to see your trajectory is exciting to be on the show and help you get as big as you can. It's like I told you earlier, I'm not in the business to make dickheads rich. You're a great dude, and if we're going to save our country for our children's children, we need more good guys to have money. So, my name's Mikey Lucas. I'm originally born in Las Vegas. I'm a recent convert to Christianity in the last about 10 years now, 15 years now. I focus really on solving major problems in the United States, which is really around power. It's a thing that I believe my calling is, and that's why we have American Energy Fund, is to not to transition out of the fossil fuel era, is to have energy addition and to have human flourishing, which makes a wave effect in the small businesses, and that boils down to the middle class and the lower class. To be able to help them actually create what was the American dream, but we need to have a revival in the American dream, because the American dream is currently dead.
I hear you. Well, I really want to get into the fact that you started off door to door selling solar, correct? But you also built and exited a multi-million-dollar energy company, and it went on to drive over $180 million in solar deals. Could you tell me about that?
Yeah, dude. Hardest thing I did was work full time, 6.5 days a week in door to door sales. You know, I'm a college dropout, so I'm self-educated, read over 800 books, now wrote my own book, writing a second book right now. And I think the journey of self-mastery is most important, because Vince, I did not believe that I should be, I didn't believe I was worthy of the calling. And that's kind of, you know, the I guess the one downside about the men in our generation is that the 20, 30, and 40-year-olds, they have this level of guilt that they walk around with, because they know who they are inside. But the key is the ability to break through that and believe, one, that you are worthy of a calling, you're worthy of something here. That's why you're still alive, which is why we have the big, the suicide rates and things like that are skyrocketing, because men in our generation don't have clarity on their purpose and their calling. And it's just, negative talk after negative talk. So that's one of the things that I learned in the door-to-door space was self-mastery, reading books. I didn't read a book until 2015. I was, had a first grade kindergarten reading level in ninth grade. So the school system really, I would say, messed me up pretty bad. And it taught me how to be really an employee, I suppose, how to show up to work and whatnot. But when I got into entrepreneurship, it started really as, selling candy bars and Monsters, and then unfortunately got into the hard drugs and things like that. And I just realized, like, hey, if I'm gonna actually live the lifestyle that I want, I should go get into something that is a product that can actually benefit people. And I realized that it was not about what I was getting, but it was more about who I was becoming. So then I just really, on a daily basis, every morning, all day long, listening to Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Eric Thomas, guys like that, Ed Milet, and found that, okay, I'm actually worthy of this calling, and said, hey, what can I hitch my trailer to, which was in the solar space. And I really, really enjoyed that. Started from the ground up, got, a lot of hurdles in that career. A lot of times I was passed up and didn't make sense why, because I wasn't in the right religion. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids and I didn't have that college degree. So I had to fight even harder, which to me, I think that's one of the issues we have with the younger 20-year-olds right now is they're not having necessarily, not all of them, but the majority of them are not having to, the overwhelming majority of them are not having to actually fight for a position or for, to obtain more skills. We're in the information age, but it was a very interesting journey, I would say, and I would never trade it for anything, man. Door to door sales literally made me who I am today, and now I'm sitting in rooms with massive family offices and private equity, and they actually appreciate that I didn't go to college.
Who was it? What was it? Was it the door-to-door sales training that was able to sort of light that fire of starting to dive in and research and learn and read and listen to all of these people, which ultimately altered your mindset? Was it door to door? Was it someone? Was it something in particular? What's the awakening aha moment?
I would say one of the main ones was, yes, it was the door to door training. It was just cutting your getting your teeth, just cutting your teeth in on the getting rejected all day long. They say a door to door guy goes and knocks on 99 doors just to make one sale. The ability to have that in business is so crucial, because we were taught, at least in my generation, like, oh, like, everything's supposed to work out. You're supposed to just, everyone gets kind of, awards, and that is not how business is. So, the door-to-door space really taught me how to have resiliency, how to have grit, how to have hunger, and also to set goals and, journal and things like that. And, that it's okay for men to cry, and that, it was a there was a couple other, I would say, moments and people in my life. One of them was when I realized that my family, before my dad had a failed entrepreneur career, tried to start a restaurant in San Diego, it failed, and so came to Vegas, restarted, became an employee, did very very well as an employee. Same with my mom. But then I realized that all of my uncles, my great uncles, my dad's uncles, and my mom's uncles were all business professionals, and they all own businesses. And I was like, wait a second, this is in my blood. And if just because my parents couldn't do it or didn't do it, doesn't mean that I can't do it. Because all of my great uncles were all, owning massive tuna boats and, hardware stores in New York, and running real estate investment companies and development companies out of New York and out of California. And so I just realized, wait a second, if they can do it, why can't I do it? And so I was like, well, I don't know what to do. So I started to get around people that were already doing it and just learn from them. And I knew that no matter what, I read a book years and years ago, called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And I realized I had to put 10,000 hours in. And so it was okay for me to not know what I was doing, or not know how to sell or how to communicate or how to run a company, because I could acquire that knowledge. I just had to spend time not on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and I had to spend time in the books. And so I really ultimately just turned my car into a classroom. That sounds super, whatever. That sounds, cliche or bumper sticker, but I drove 30 something thousand, 30,000 miles a year. And instead of using the car to listen to Taking Back Sunday and, Wiz Khalifa or whatever, I started listening to Malcolm Gladwell and John C. Maxwell and, a lot of these guys. So I had to reprogram my mind, and that took a lot because, I've been sober from heroin, synthetic heroin, Oxycontin for going on 13 years now. And it wasn't like a little bit of Oxycontin. It was like 500, 600 milligrams a day Oxycontin. So it was really bad. And it obviously ended up getting into heroin just because it was cheaper. And, reprogramming my mind, because from my understanding, I fried my brain. So I really had to work on that. When I was around other guys that were all, taking Adderall, and they were all, educated and things like that, I had to really work super hard to find out how I learned and how I can execute and make an impact in the world. And the first one was just giving my mom a return on her investment.
Wow. Dude, you hit rock bottom.
Multiple times.
Yeah. A lot of times that's usually what it takes.
Yeah.
Man, that's, and then turning your car into a classroom. Les Brown talks about that. How or was it Les Brown, or was it Zig Ziglar that talks about how many hours that you spend in the car?
Both. Yeah. Both.
How you could use that time to actually educate yourself through motivational speakers and books and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But $180 million in solar deals?
187. Yeah. A little bit more than that.
That's insane, man. That's a lot.
Yeah, we did pretty good. Created multiple award-winning sales reps. I wasn't the best salesman, but I like to say that I'm more of a Phil Jackson than I am a Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan. The main thing was for me was bringing people out of what is a cap in the in like restaurant industry. I'm from Vegas, right? So taking men and women out of the restaurant and the club scene and showing them how to use that same amount of effort, teach them skills. They already like, hospitality. They're in Vegas, and use that on a ticket, on a quote unquote high ticket offer, which was solar at the time, which unfortunately solar is pretty much dead at this point. By the time this is released, solar will be dead because the Senate's going to pass a bill that's going to kill the ITC. But at that time, that was the best opportunity that I could find. And it wasn't that, selling real estate or whatever, or insurance wasn't going to couldn't be a more sustainable recession proof industry. But, and those even changed as well. Like, real estate people are struggling. But at the end of the day, I knew that power was something that people needed no matter what. And I was like, who can't sell somebody, to save, a system that would save them, five, $600,000 a year. And I just convinced a bunch of people to come out with me and showed them how I was having fun, on doors, knocking doors, riding scooters, being basically a kid, a 20-something-year-old kid on doors, and was able to have fun and get through the you know the bull crap in the beginning of no, 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 I'm not interested, but teaching them skills of actually how to effectively communicate to get people to listen to you.
Mikey, I want to go back. That story of yours is pretty intense. And I didn't think we were going to go on such a mindset route, but I love that topic.
Yeah.
What do you think has changed? You mentioned at the beginning of the show that the American dream is dead.
Yeah.
What do you think has changed?
So usually, from what I've understood, is the American dream is you come in, you get a job, you work 20 years, you retire, and you live the rest of your life. Well, that has since changed. Majority of our parents are in their 60s and 70s now, or 50s, 60s, 70s now, and they're all still working. The reason why is because, unfortunately, the capital markets, once I would say, got off the gold standard, is when it really ultimately started to change. It's less about like, it was about like, oh, owning a house and a white picket fence and a Tahoe and your boat and your dog named Charlie, to now it's just survival mode. And it's been survival mode over the last like 20, 30 years. And it's hard to see families go through that. But the American dream is still around. It is just very different. And so what is different now is that it's no longer about, in my generation, it was always, in the 2000s when I was in high school, it was go to school, get a degree, and go get in the workforce. And that was being what's the quote? It's you're a master of none, right? Don't be a jack of all trades, be a master of one. And unfortunately, with AI, as I know that you're very big in AI, leveraging AI. With AI nowadays, you cannot be a master of one. If you're a master of one, you are exposed to the elements, and you are going to get your butt rocked. Your business is going to get rocked. So it's transitioning back to being a jack of all trades, not a master of one, because the rest of the quote says, but oftentimes a better than a master of one. So being a jack of all trades actually is the best thing that ever could happen to me. So to have that's where door-to-door sales and building those companies really taught me how to recruit, fire, hire, sell, manage people, things like that, build and scale companies, because now I'm doing that in massive private equity field now. So it's been a very interesting journey.
I think it's creativity. I think what AI is going to bring about, it's going to separate the creative from the non-creative. And if you are a non-creative, if you are a 1 + 2 = 3, A, B, C type of person where this is just how it is, like unless you're a doctor or you're some kind of in the medical field, which even then a lot of that's going to be taken over by AI. But I think in order for you to get what you need from AI, you actually have to be extremely creative yourself, because even with just simple prompting, if I just say, build me an email to this insurance adjuster, that's only going to give me what it gives me. But if I give it the proper context and I sort of let it inside my brain of what it is that I wanted to create, then what's going to come back out is going to be much better. And because AI is going to take over all of those mundane tasks and those simple tasks, like I'll give you an example. We're creating a value clarity report. So basically what I'm doing is I'm going to entrepreneurs, business owners, and whether they want to sell or not, I'm putting a valuation on their company. And it's a whole roadmap that I'm putting together of the next 3, 5, 10 years. We put a whole score together. But at the end of the day, I create it myself, but I'm creating the whole template on exactly how to do it. And I'm building an AI agent right now to go ahead and do it. I have an assistant that's actually helping me with it, but I'm going to eventually have AI do it. So the point is that I encourage my entire team to use AI as much as possible. And what I've noticed now recently, especially with my marketing team, they use it so much that they're actually now, I don't want to say coming up with ideas, but you could just feel a different energy where it's just like they're thinking outside the box a little bit more. They're finding different ways to actually use it. And people think that, if I use it, it's just going to end up replacing me. I don't want to use that thing. It's like, no, you need to go all in on it now, because what it's going to actually bring out of you, it's going to actually raise your game to the next level to be that much more creative and think that much outside the box. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Skills is something that is super undervalued in the business world. And your ability to leverage AI, this is similar. I would say it's parallel to, like, okay, if you don't have a personal brand by 2025, if you don't have a personal brand now by 2030, you're going to get left behind. That is technically true. But if you don't use and leverage AI in your business, you will unfortunately be left behind. Like that, there is no doubt about that. And all of my team members are all using AI, and we built GPTs and things like that around, and agents around their specific role in the company. And I highly encourage them to do that. And it actually, I penalize them if they don't use it, because they have to, because they don't know everything, and AI can actually teach them.
No, they're almost that much less productive and less good of an employee if they're not using it, as opposed to if they are using it, they are that much more effective and that much more productive and that much more valuable to me.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's all about being efficient, effective, and productive. And the value that they bring to the company is their ability to use AI.
Why is it that every successful entrepreneur that I speak to, every successful motivational speaker says it, every zillionaire, billionaire that you listen to, that you talk to, why is it that we can go on for days about systems and processes? We can go on for days about marketing and strategy and sales and leadership and all of these things. Why is it that it always comes back to ultimately believing in yourself and believing in the fact that you are a human being, which automatically makes you capable of things beyond your wildest dreams, because the human being itself is almost a supernatural thing when you look at the way the brain works, the way the body works, the way everything goes. But why is it that it always comes back? Every single one of these people, every single one of these successful people, it always comes back to having the proper mindset, believing in yourself, believing that you can, and knowing that you're capable of so much more.
Well, I mean, ancient philosophers all the way back thousands of years say that the tongue is like the rudder to a massive ship, very, very small, but very impactful. And it determines the direction of where you're going. And we have something like 80, between 50 and 80,000 thoughts a day, or words a day. And the majority of those, unfortunately, are very negative. And if you live in a negative state, then you're not able to create, or what you create will end up being destroyed. And so if you don't work on your, having a positive outlook on life, having a positive mental attitude, having a can-do, mindset, if you don't have that, then no matter, I don't care who you are, you're going to have a lot of suffering. And when you deny reality, it guarantees pain.
Why is it that I was able to be very successful in sales? I was able to scale my company to multiple millions of dollars. I was CEO, leadership positions, successful YouTube show, all kinds of stuff. And all the entire time, I didn't even know until honestly, I hate to sometimes admit it, but I admit it on the show all the time. It wasn't until late 2023, early 2024, when I was just like, wait a minute, I'm not actually right. I actually doubt myself a lot. And this confidence that I portray is actually not the confidence that I have inside. I actually don't think I'm capable.
Yeah.
I make hiring decisions, and I make decisions on my business based on fear, which is
Yeah.
not the way I should be doing it. And every time I think about millions and billions of dollars and that amount of success, not only does it scare me, but no, actually, that's what it is. I'm afraid of it because I'm afraid of the responsibility. I'm afraid of the person that I might become. I'm afraid of all these things. Why did it take me so long? How was I successful before that and still in that sort of negative state of mind? It was, I mean, you can answer, but I already know it was in my subconscious, dude. It
Yeah.
was pretty wild. It wasn't until I actually had to seek therapy for
Yeah.
the therapist to be like, wait a minute, why do you keep saying that? Why do you keep saying that? That's negative. Why are you saying that? It was like dug back in here. It was just wild for me. I don't know. I just had to talk about that because of what you were talking about.
That's a very important realization, and I'm proud of you for actually being able to admit that it was just recent. Because anybody can white knuckle success for 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, even. But it's not about in the game of life. It's not about just being successful for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It's about winning the game of life decade after decade after decade. And the only way that you can do that and not deny reality is to understand that there's going to be valleys and there's going to be mountaintops. And if you can say, okay, well, the fruit is the fruit is in the valley, not on the mountaintop. There's no fruit on the top of the mountain. So in the valley, the struggle, right? They all say, what's that quote that I don't really like this quote, but they say that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. That is true, but I definitely want the destination. The destination is definitely why I'm working so hard and why I'm
Right.
working for what I'm working for. But the realization that I had for that and what people can take out of this is that it's really a matter of who you're becoming and not what you're getting. Because money comes, money goes. You see, what's the average billionaire has gone bankrupt something like 7 times.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, like why aren't we understanding, and why can't we sit there and ponder and really slow down and recall or remember, like, when a billionaire goes bankrupt, they lose everything. That's like months on end where they're now living on top ramen and borrowing money from people. And you hear that over and over and over again with very successful people. But we go, oh, well, they're successful now. It's like, well, they had 6 months, 2 months, 2 years, 3 years of absolute turmoil in their mind, of massive amounts of pressure, anxiety, and depression that they had to go through. But what makes them different than someone who didn't get out of that and made it back? It's what they have in their heart and it's what they have in their mind.
Absolutely. All right. Well, okay. I asked you what was there a turning point where you went literally from, what was the turning point that you went from solar salesman to solar CEO to 180 million dollars in solar sales to ultimately transitioning into owning energy assets? And not just that, but you mentioned something here in my notes where you talk about it wasn't just about the panels. It was about the power. Can you tell me about that? And can you tell me about this transition that you went basically into private equity and energy assets?
Sure. So the idea around solar was, most people think it's just about going green and right and all the green stuff. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a green person. I'm still a solar guy, and I care about the oceans and the atmosphere. And I know that we're running the worst experiment on the planet Earth that we have. Like, we are in a enclosed sphere where we're just emitting, carbon emissions that ultimately, if you look at it at a visual point of view, if I park my car in a garage and I fall asleep, and you park your car in a garage and you fall asleep, you're not going to wake up because you're driving a Tahoe and I'm driving a Tesla. Why? Because of the carbon emissions that are coming out of cars. But people have, since the early 2000s, the Al Gore era, have blown it out of proportion that we're all dying, and we're going to die by 2012 and then die by 2022 or whatever, they were saying. It's not about the green side of it. It's about flourishing so that people can have cheap, reliable, sustainable energy. That was my initial run in the solar space. That's why I got so adamant and so passionate about having sustainable energy or having control, at least on your house and in your business. Then I realized something that was bigger than me, was I was like, why are we getting into all these wars, right? So like in high school, we're in Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan. We're fighting overseas. And a lot of my buddies that were graduating were going in the military and were going over and fighting, and respect to those guys. But I realized somebody needed to do something to avoid having our children and our children's children and our great men go and fight over American interest overseas. And one of those ways to do that was to be able to actually have reliable, sustainable energy in America, which was for me at the time was putting up one solar panel at a time. And I was like, I am making a difference in people's lives. Number one, I'm making a difference in potentially their children's lives. Number two, for not having to go overseas for energy, which unfortunately is was the truth. And then that was, that's really the thing that gets me fired up and makes me super passionate about what I do is behind the meter power. So providing power to businesses, AI data centers and residential was, I believe, going to stop wars from overseas and moms and dads from losing their sons and daughters over American interests in the Middle East.
So how'd you make the transfer? How'd you make the transition?
I realized that one panel at a time wasn't going to be enough. And I said, okay, if the government's not going to do anything about this, which they kind of are, they're kind of not. The government's ultimately, if you want to know how the government's ran, go to the DMV. That is the government at large. And I realized, okay, well, I was around, I purchased, a couple $100,000 worth of masterminds, and I started getting around people that were much bigger thinkers than me, people that were way more educated than I was. But when they like slowed down and respected that I was a door-to-door salesman for as long as I was, they were like, oh my God, like if you can do that, you can do anything. And I was like, if I can do that, I can do anything. I've heard that before when I was a kid. Okay. And then I started realizing, hey, one of my passions in the home or in the business at the kitchen table, I was trying to solve two problems. One of them was obviously having, control over your power, and the other one was divorce. Divorce, the reason why divorce is so big to me, because my parents got divorced, and a lot of my friends' parents got divorced, and solving the single parent, raising kids is a passion of mine, because I believe that if we're going to stop all this crime or whatever in America, and we're going to have a better thriving America, we need to have families that stay together. One way to do that was to avoid the two reasons why people get divorced: over sex and over money. I can't help them with the sex part, but I can help them with the money part. And so in the homes, in the businesses, I was showing them how to use the natural resources that we have and what they have on their roof to be able to lower their OpEx, their operating expenses, or their nut in the house, as far as how much money they're spending on a monthly basis. And so when I can do that, I was solving all of these problems. I was keeping parents together, because the utility rates have gone up 50% in the last 10 years. Pretty crazy, but they still have to pay it. And then I was helping them obviously spend less money, so that hopefully now they're fighting less about money. And then the big one was helping this us going overseas to war when we can just use the natural resources here. So when I transitioned out of it, I realized if I really wanted to I already made a dent, made a massive dent, but I wanted to make like an atomic bomb, hole in the ground when it came to us actually not having to go overseas for energy. And so I had this knack around, this like curiosity and creativeness around investing. And, when you're selling solar, you're doing as much solar as I did. I personally installed just under $30 million of residential solar. Even if I was making, $1,000, $2,000 on an account, I was making really good money. And it was really hard for me, as an example, to show up to my family and friends' houses with nice cars. So I didn't get nice cars until 2019. I bought my first Tesla, $100,000 vehicle. Before that, I was driving $20,000, $30,000 vehicles, and the rest of my money I just started investing it. Made a lot of mistakes, made a lot of money, and realized, okay, people on the internet want to know about what I'm doing and where I'm failing at. And then people started coming to me for like, hey, what do I do with my money? What do I do with my money? What do I do with my money? And I was like, all right, well, maybe I should start something that helps these people do something with their money. And it's very purpose driven investing. And purpose-driven investing to me is really is not just investing for a return, but is yes, you're investing for a return, but you're doing it with some sort of a cause, almost like donating to a charity. And that was the company, American Energy Fund, that I started. Was I wanted you to feel like you were actually doing something good with your money. And that is why I ultimately started American Energy Fund, to go in.
So can you dive into American Energy Fund? What is it that you guys do with the money? Like, how does that work?
Sure. So initially, the first couple of years, we went out and we cut our teeth on drilling oil and gas wells, buying mineral rights, mineral deeds, investing into oil companies, doing loans, credit to private credit to these oil and gas companies. We would basically identify. So we're not venture capital; it's all private. We're not no stock market stuff. We're not like we're not a hedge fund. We're not buying Chevron stock and doing options and calls. We're doing all private placement. In direct participation in oil and gas, in solar, and in energy production. And so initially it was, hey, we're going to go buy oil and gas wells, get some returns from that, end up turning those profits into buying mineral deeds, which is kind of like your treasury style for in the oil and gas space. And then we started to also, at the same time, we were lending money to oil and gas and solar companies that were already existing. They had a very good track record, already had really good teams in place, and we'd basically just inject capital in those businesses, consult when we could, or I'm on the board of a couple of companies now, and give them essentially guidance and get them up to speed 2025, 2026 to actually how to scale their business and become more profitable. And then now, as of really this year, we've transitioned, and I've known that the oil and gas space is it's highs and lows, right? Like right now we're basically in war with Iran, so it's like oil and gas price has shot up, which is great. But at the end of the day, as far as how we underwrite an oil and gas deal, is we underwrite an oil and gas deal on the 40-year average, which is right around $40-$45 a barrel. So it doesn't really matter, not that it doesn't matter what the price of oil and gas is, but we really wanted to make sure that we were a total return fund, not just a monthly cash flow fund. And so the way that we could do that is taking less return by giving money in the form of convertible debt, convertible notes, which basically is you give somebody $1 million loan and they pay you back 15%, and then you get that immediate $1 million in equity in their company. And now you're just stacking equity within all these different companies. And even if some of them failed, the rest of them, they end up thriving. So the big thing now that we're focusing on is powering AI data centers. And so we're in the process right now of doing an M&A, a merger and an acquisition within a power providing company. And we're starting a new power company to go and power AI data centers, because the hard part, the biggest issue that they have is not the chips or the water or the buildings themselves, or even the workers, which is a big problem, skilled workers. It is power. When a data center like the Abilene one, Stargate, the one that's all over the internet and Trump talked about and things like that, that data center with OpenAI and with Oracle and SoftBank, that company's not going to get power from the grid for 3-4 years, but they have the money. They have the money to put up a building right now. And so what they need, just if you look at XAI, the Colossus one in Tennessee, Elon's data center, they have to have off-grid power. They're basically an island. They have to be off-grid for a series of 1 to 3 years until they can get interconnection from the grid, which brings up an even bigger problem that we have. But they need power, and they need power now. So behind the meter power is what I've been doing for the last little over a decade now, with solar, natural gas, nuclear, geothermal, fuel cells, things like that. And that's where the money's at, and I just follow the money.
You mentioned before the show that you didn't know about any of this before you got into it. What the hell? I have to admit, Mikey, I'm a little confused by it all. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
So when somebody invests in you, and you mentioned something about wells and barrels and all this stuff, like, do you guys like physically go out and find these things? Like, where are these things located? Like, how does somebody get a return on their investment?
So how somebody gets a return on their investment, then I'll get back and do how I find the deals. The finding the deals is the very easy part. That there's no shortage of deals. I'm on calls 5-6 times a week of getting pitched on why we should do that.
And then I also want you to touch on the $1 million on interest that you can take from your investment, something like that you mentioned as well.
Awesome. So essentially what American Energy Fund is, it's a private equity firm. So people give us money and then we go invest on their behalf. So I've got my own money. I've got multiple six figures, in the actual business as well as a bunch of sweat equity. So they're not just giving me money to go and, put on something that I think is going to win. I'm putting my own money in first and saying, hey, this is something that I'm going to risk my hard-earned money on. Come with me. So we're a 506c Reg D energy fund. We go out and we buy these oil and gas companies, oil and gas projects, solar projects, nuclear projects, and now in the powering of AI data centers. And so how they get a return on it is essentially is just they participate in the profits of the actual fund. So as an example, somebody puts in $1 million or puts in $100,000, they should expect every single year at least a minimum of 8% return every single year. Now we're building the fund because we're building the fund to sell. The off taker, which is important in funds, is we are selling to other massive private equity firms or to family offices. Well, guess what? I know exactly what those family offices and private equity firms are looking for. And so they don't want to do the work. This is like door-to-door sales. This is the hard part. Not that what they're doing is not hard, because it is, but this is the hardest part of the entire private equity world. The little guys like Mikey Lucas and American Energy Fund are the hardest part, is putting together the deals and actually making sure that those deals are successful. That's the hardest part. They want to buy already pre-existing portfolios that are already cash flowing and that have been able to go through, the pruning of that portfolio. And so I know exactly what these private equity firms and what these family offices want. So I'm just building portfolios that they're going to buy. And in 7 years, they're going to purchase it, and we sell for 3, 4, 5x of what we actually bought all the projects for, and we make a massive profit. We get monthly passive income and active income active income, which is super important because in energy it's active income. Majority of the tax write-offs. In real estate, it's mostly passive income. So your W-2 job, what you're making money on right now, you're paying the federal government. You actually, if you invest into energy and you partner with the government, you actually get active income tax benefits, which again, you're just redirecting the money that you would have spent to the government, 50, 60, 100, 200 grand a year, 500 grand a year. You're investing it into American energy. Okay. And at that point, you're getting massive tax benefits and you're growing your wealth at a massive rate. So at the end of the day, we're going out, we're identifying companies that are already existing and that they're doing very, very well, but they're too small for big banks. But
so you're using that money to invest in them.
Exactly.
It just clicked for me.
Yeah. So we're essentially buying equity or giving debt to oil and gas, solar companies, nuclear companies, fuel cell companies, power generation companies, and either getting equity or getting debt and giving them debt. And it's, if we're giving them debt, just to be clear here, it is majority of the time it's going to be convertible debt, which means we want equity within the company. We'll take less of a return. Instead of getting 30, 40, 50% returns, which is oftentimes how it is in energy, we'll take 12 to 15% so long as we can get equity long-term in that actual company. And that's, again, that doesn't mean a bunch of cash flow up front, but that means that once we sell, because we have equity with all these companies, now it's a significantly higher, multiple. So it's been a very, very good journey. And no, I didn't know anything about private equity. I mean, I invested in some kind of like angel investing initially, but I went to Barnes and Noble, bought every book on private equity, bought every book on venture capital, bought all these, investors, Grahams and the Dalios and the Buffetts and the Mungers, and read all of their books about what they're doing. Now, most of those guys buy stocks, but they do talk about why they're buying the stock, which means they're buying the company. And they're buying the owner, they're buying the founder. And so understanding what their criteria was around risk is basically what I took in the private world. And, that's one of the reasons why there's a lot less companies now IPOing, going public, just because you can technically make more money in the private sector.
What are you looking for in a business that you're potentially going to acquire or you're going to merge with? What are some of the key things that you're looking for?
The founder and the team. So running teams, this is something that, in door-to-door sales is what taught me, and it sounds really cliche, bumper sticker, but it's very true. How are they treating their teams? How are they treating their low level, their assistants, the concierge at the front desk? Like, how are they treating them? How are they treating their crews that are out in the field? And are their crews incentivized to actually get the job done, or are they just paid hourly? That's a super important for me, it's like, hey, if your crews are not incentivized to get the job done, then that means that our money is going to be delayed. And so that's a very important structure of how they incentivize their
Well,
team's employees.
you would know that best, being in the solar space of
Correct.
commission only, salary plus
Correct.
commission, bonuses, so on and so forth.
Correct. Yeah, so we look at the founders, we look at the teams, and a lot of these guys, if they're presenting, and to be clear, I've never had one oil man ever tell me this isn't the best deal he's ever seen in 40 years. It's every single time it's that. But the hard part about oil and gas is that it's, if you're drilling oil and gas, which is the riskiest part of oil and gas, our philosophy is more around the picks and shovels over actually the actual oil themselves. The gold rush, the ones that made the most amount of money were the ones selling the picks and shovels. Not that we can't go after gold, because we can, but we wanted to sell more picks and shovels and support the oil and gas or the energy sector rather than trying to go and make it gigantic. And that's ultimately what billionaires do. They want to jump over 1 foot poles, not 6 foot poles. Learned that from Warren Buffett. But yeah, at the end of the day, we're finding companies that are already existing. They can't get, because of the Zero Banking Alliance, they can't get funding from these banks. And we just injected capital to them, and now we own a bunch of oil and gas companies. And
how many mergers and acquisitions do you do per year, would you say?
On average, there's at most 4. But we try to stick, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, a typical deal probably takes 9 months to 14 months, right?
Yeah. So it's not as easy as it sounds, but we have a really good team, and we leverage AI to help us with it. We're pretty nimble, but we have consultants that help us actually evaluate companies and things like that.
Wow. Yeah, that's fantastic. And how long have you been doing this now?
Going on 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the companies that you're looking for, you're also looking for, I'm assuming, and if they're in power, if they're in this space of oil and all these things that basically power the entire planet, I'm assuming you got to find some really good-natured founders, right? That are really in it because they ultimately obviously want to make money, but they really want to help empower and power the entire world. They're probably on the same page with you, a lot of them, right?
Yeah. It's one of the keys about money management is and managing, so not just money management, but managing the money that you put into these companies. Is one of my philosophies is, if I wouldn't go on a vacation with you, a week vacation, I'm not going to give you my money, because at the end of the day, you're going to have a relationship with this person for 5 to 10 years. And so if if you don't want to go to the office and like be around that team, that people, or that person, I no offense, but I don't care how much money you're going to make us. Even though that might, not get me to the finish line faster than other people. I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to be giving you money, because I want to be able to like having and getting on a call with you.
Because at the same time, I'm sure you're meeting some massive egos.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, you can listen to all their teammates, people that played against them, specifically their teammates. They all said they had massive egos. There's nothing wrong with having a massive ego like that, so long as they are purpose driven. If they're purpose driven and they're about, leaving a legacy for America, that's something that's super important to me. And if they're just in it for the money, or they're just in it for the money, it's usually not a very good sign. And looking at their family life is important as well, because if they can't run their family, then usually it's going to be very hard on their business.
Do you have a standard limit on the acquisition timeline of how long you guys are involved with this company, or owning the company, or invested in the company?
It all just depends. So in certain companies, there's obviously obvious times where you're like, okay, it's time to sell. The hard part is that, if you don't ride it out for 5 to 7 years, which is what we like to do, the value of that company could, quintuple. But there is times where, yes, all roads lead to getting the hell out.
Got it.
And so when you do that, you sell the company, you sell it and you get out, or you cut your losses and you get out.
I love this thing that you said here, this think and invest like billionaires, not millionaires. I can see that you have gone that route. Could you please explain to me what that means?
Yeah. So invest like a billionaire, not like a millionaire. So you can live like a billionaire, not like a millionaire. So you can give like a billionaire, not like a millionaire. So you vacation like a billionaire, not like a millionaire, so that you can have the things that you want and the things that, can make an impact in the world. The reason why millionaires are living paycheck to paycheck nowadays is because they live in this. There's three stages. There's pre-wealthy, wealthy, and post-wealthy. The people that are in the post-wealthy stage, they live differently, and there's this ideology and dogma around rich people are bad, and I don't. I do know some of those people. There are Scrooge McDucks out there, but the majority of the super wealthy people that I know are literally the most giving, caring, respected, and respectful people that I even know. And
Down to
so,
earth.
yeah, down to earth. The people that are super wealthy, when they see guys like you, Vince, or guys like me, they go, "Wow, like this kid's actually got it. He's got it." And they want to give you so much, which is one of the reasons why I told you before our show. I was like, "Yo, bro, please call me because I want to be your sounding board." Again, I'm not in the business to make dickheads rich. I want to make great men like you as rich as you possibly can, so that you can. Because I can't take over Florida. I'm not in Florida. You're in Florida, so let me help you take over Florida and make your community better by investing more businesses and things like that into your community. Whether that's or philanthropy stuff, things like that, which I know that you have a heart for. And the rich people that are portrayed on the internet or whatever that people think are all these bad people. Like I've actually hung out with these people in their homes or at events where they are the most genuine people that I know.
I have these arguments with my friends all the time.
They're not right. They're wrong. They are
No,
very wrong. It's very obvious. It's unfortunately it's an ignorance that they because of self-sabotage and like you were talking about earlier, how you had to go through that.
fear.
It's that fear and that self-sabotage. Like if I become rich, then I'll be an asshole. It's like, no, you're already an asshole and you have no money.
And if you think that, why would you ever want to become rich? Which now disallows you ever becoming rich.
Correct. And then you get to complain about all your friends and call them overnight successes and
Yes.
and then but hold on, Vince, hold on. We're still the ones that they call when they need money. And it's like, you can't hate on me. I mean, I guess you can. You can't hate on me and then 6 months later or 6 years later go, "Hey, I'm in a rut. I know you have money. Can you give me money?" It's like, I can't tell you how many times that's happened. And I actually do freely give money to invest money into, my friends and family's lives when they need it and things like that. But, it's very interesting. Why do I do that? Well, because number one, it makes me feel really good. And number two, it's trying to prove that rich people are not the enemy here.
Yeah, we support an army over here. Of the whole family and stuff, we support an army. It's great though. We love it. I know we're running out of time. Do you have a hard stop?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, cool. What's the Billionaire's Profit Blueprint?
The Billionaire's Profit Blueprint is a sheet, is a Google sheet that I created, which I'll give to you. You can put it in the description, so people can go and get it. It's totally free. It's on my website as well. It is actually one of your guests talked about it prior. So part of what is inside the Billionaire
Profit First.
Yeah, part of it is the Profit First method. It is basically a tracker of all of your money, your net worth, all of your expenses, and your investment portfolio in a spreadsheet manner where you get to track your money. Where is it going? And I always tell people that if you don't assign every dollar before it hits your bank account, it will assign itself for you. And so the main thing is if you want to grow your wealth, if you want the whatever, the boat, the yacht, the dream house in Tahoe or whatever, well, if that's a good dream, but it only becomes a goal when you can actually track it and measure it. And so one of the things about the Billionaire's Profit Blueprint is designing your life. What do you want? And then how much is it going to take for you to get there? And then you just decide, hey, do I actually want to work for a 350-foot yacht? Most of the time, the answer is no, because they have to put in more work than they're willing to. So, okay, cool. Go buy a 35-foot, ski boat or whatever. And it's a tracker of your money coming in, money going out, and all of the goals that you have, as well as, again, a net worth tracker, your debt tracker. It tracks your credit worthiness, your credit score. It's all of that inside of one. It took an idiot like me to build a spreadsheet that, for whatever reason, when I was doing some coaching, things like that, and consulting, people pay tens of thousands of dollars for me to give them, guidance on their business, their life, their finances, things like that. But the thing that made them most excited was the stinking Billionaire's Profit Blueprint. I used to call it the budget mixer. So they love the Billionaire's Profit Blueprint because it is a spreadsheet that just works. And it's, if you wanted to gain 5 pounds or 10 pounds of muscle or lose 20 pounds of fat, like it's probably smart that you track that. And how are you tracking that? Okay, cool. A scale, but also measuring your hips, measuring your waist, measuring your chest, measuring your arms. It's like, how do you get to where you want to get to without ultimate clarity?
Metrics. So
Metrics.
important.
The
Measure.
hard part is actually using it. And so how I was able to get not only myself, but also a lot of my team members, a lot of my sales guys back in the day, and now the people that I just give it away to, how I tell them to use it is to set aside time on a Sunday or on Friday when you get paid, put it at calendar event, 15, 20 minutes, and just spend that time to go put in what your paycheck was. Or if it's zero, go in there and put in zero and go on to the next week. So if it's not a calendar event and you don't actually consistently do it where it's reminding you to do it, the odds of you actually, executing on it is going to be slim to none. And the hard part about business is you have to execute.
Mindset is the common theme. And honestly, your blueprint for finance is a common theme that I'm seeing with more of these interviews, more of these people that I'm seeing, is those separate bank accounts, is that profit first system. I'm talking to financial advisors, I'm talking to finance experts, and they all follow the same thing. It's just like create all these different accounts. And as soon as a dollar comes in, separate it all into all the different accounts.
Yeah. If you don't allocate every dollar before it hits your bank account, your $10,000, right? If you're an independent contractor or a small business owner and you don't allocate 15, 20, 30% for taxes, you're going to use that money for something else.
All right, let's try our best to close with this, because if not, we're going to be talking all day. The Life baseball card system. What is that?
So I learned this from Ray Dalio years ago when I read his book Principles. I'm actually rereading through it right now for the 7th time or 8th time now. And what I realized was, for me to be able to stay motivated myself, stay encouraged, and stay on the right, upward trajectory, up and right trajectory, I needed to track what I liked, what I wanted, who I was becoming, what I was afraid of, and what were my true motivations, and did I actually like doing what I was doing, and what really gets me going. So I would say controlled chaos gets me going, keeps me going. It's one of the reasons why you see people when they retire, they die really, really quickly or soon within 5-10 years because they end up just stopping. Men were not designed to do that. So like retirement is not really something that is smart to do. If you're retired, you need to go find something else to do, even though you don't need the money, or maybe you do need the money. When you retire, you need to be doing something. A lot of times it's just giving back. The baseball card analogy came from Ray Dalio, and what that was ultimately finding out what motivates Vince. And so I would start keeping track of your shoe size, your hat size, your shirt size, what things you liked, what things motivated you, what did you talk about a lot. And then I would just, for my sales guys and also for my team now, or people that I'm around, I have these baseball cards that identify not just their metrics on sales and things like that, which is obviously super important, but also are you leading more to, I would say, like burnout, which I don't really believe in burnout, but are you leading more to things that you're not doing? Are you doing things you don't like doing? Why? Well, because for me, I've identified that if I don't take my dogs and hang out with my dogs a certain amount of hours a week, I'm not as on point. I'm not in flow state. I'm not moving as quickly as I want to be. Obviously, for me, something that's very important is my relationship with God and relationship with my wife. If I'm not allocating and tracking the amount of time that I'm doing that, that's one of the reasons why I'm off. So if I'm off, it's very easy for me to go back and say, cool, sweet. How much time did I spend, with God this week? How much time did I spend with my wife this week? When was the last time we went on a date? And it's like identifying the foundational, the base load, stats that you need to track, for, as an example, calling my mom, spending time on the phone with my dad, right? Unfortunately, I just lost my grandfather, but, spending time on the phone with my grandfather, calling my nephews and nieces. If I'm not doing those things, I end up losing the drive, even though the great purpose of stopping, wars overseas is great. But why am I actually doing this? I'm actually a family man. And so I know that if I don't do those things, those base load energy, tasks, like calling my mom and talking with her on the phone, like I talked to her on Sunday for like an hour and a half. And if I don't do those things, I end up getting out of sync and getting out of alignment. And so having that baseball card is super important to know what you need to do to make sure that you're staying on the track.
I love that you said you don't believe in burnout. God,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
If you're not doing the things that excite you, that energize you, you're going to get burnout. Also, what's really helped me, if you don't have the vision and the end in mind and the life that you want to achieve, if you don't know what that is, then all you're doing on a daily basis is just a bunch of tasks. And that's
Yeah.
what puts you on the hamster wheel. But if you already know and you sense it desired and you expect it already to happen, then all you're doing every day is just getting a step closer to that, baby. And it's just like all it does is energize you. And like, I'm totally with you. I used to think it was burnout, but I also like what you said with the baseball card of really knowing and understanding what are the things that actually do energize you, even outside of work. Because I am exactly like you. If I'm not spending after 5:30, 6 o'clock, the rest of my night strictly with my family, I'm going to be a little off. If I'm not getting my workout in the morning, I'm going to be a little off. If I'm just maybe a day or so, I'm just eating a bunch of junk food, I'm going to be a little bit off. And I know exactly the things that are, but that's interesting. I didn't really think about it that way. That just comes naturally to me just because I refuse to do things that I don't want to do anyway. But I see that when you're feeling a little off, you should like take a step back and just be like, wait a minute, why are me and my wife a little bit more edgy? Maybe we need to go on that date. Maybe we need to, and we realize that real quick. It's like date night. Yeah, date night. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. I love that, man, dude. Mikey, that was
I'll even add a little bit more to that. So for me personally, because I realized through coaching that there's certain things that Mikey needs, which again you can find out for yourself, and the listeners can find out for themselves as well. Is what do I need to stay in a beautiful state? How do I live in this high energy state and still and be able to do that for a long period of time? For me, one of those things was going out and being a kid. Adventure is something that's super important to me. So one thing that I'll do is, because of this whole COVID, everyone's in their rooms and all that kind of stuff in their offices. I will go out and spend, there's times where I'll spend 3 weeks in the office and just be locked in here basically. And then there's times where I'm like, okay, I need to get out. I need to go look for a new coffee shop, and I'll just be around people because I'm an introverted extrovert. My wife would say I'm an extrovert, but I'm an introverted extrovert. I really would rather have these kind of conversations around 3, 4, 5 people, but I do like being around, other people. And even if they're just studying for school, that makes me, that helps give and add energy back into me to say, oh, well, they're studying for something. They're working on something, some real estate agent or whatever is working on something. And that means I need to get after it. So I end up going to and finding new coffee shops, which I just enjoy coffee. And the other thing that I do is I have a Segway scooter. And so I'll just go be a kid, the one that I rode around in door-to-door sales. I'll just go be a kid and go dream build through River Oaks and Tanglewood right here in Houston. And I'll just go dream build and ride my scooter around, houses like that. And it's for me, riding a scooter as a 33-year-old, it's I didn't have a car for about 3 years. I have a car now, but when I moved to Houston, I didn't have a car. I rode my scooter everywhere, and I absolutely love it because it's like being a kid. And don't I hear that from a lot of very successful people is don't lose that inner child in you. I'm like, dude, I'm never going to lose that inner child in me. I'm still the same guy, the guy that's sitting in massive, oak wood, office settings with, big private equity family office people in, oil and gas and data center, executives. I'm still Mikey Lucas. I'm still the kid, and I'm going to have fun. But I do know that, when you work, and you play when you play, and you don't ever mix the two.
You got to be one of the youngest people in those rooms.
Yeah, by far.
Yeah. One last question, because I think it's important to know, and you can answer. It's a rapid fire question. How much money would you say you have spent on coaching since you started launching your career?
Close to $1.6 million.
That's where we finish it. People don't even get it, man. All right, Mikey, thanks so much for coming on, man. I really, really appreciate your time. That was like a lot better than I thought it would be. Not that I thought it would be bad, but it went above and beyond. So, Mike, I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, and I look forward to flying over there and actually meeting you in person and us grabbing some dinner and do a little masterminding for sure, because there's a lot that I can learn from you, and I really do appreciate that. And I thank you so much for offering your advice.
Vince, I got you, brother. I'm here for you, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Mikey, thanks.